Hello and welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm of course your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 268th episode, our returning guest is Governor Eric Holcomb. You first heard Governor Eric Holcomb on episode 221 of the podcast. Eric Holcomb is the 51st governor of the state of Indiana. Starting in March 2020, I had the opportunity to participate virtually in dozens and dozens of televised press conferences with Governor Holcomb and other state officials. These were mostly centered around the COVID-19 pandemic, but other topics were also discussed. For a complete list, check the show notes. This is actually the third year I have been invited to sit down for a one-on-one interview with Governor Holcomb. The first two times were at the governor's office at the Indiana Statehouse. This discussion took place at the governor's mansion. The first time I did that, I did so in my role as editor of the Wabash Plain Dealer. These past two occasions, Governor Holcomb was a guest of the Rob Burgess Show. Thank you to Governor Holcomb and his staff, especially former Press Secretary Erin Murphy and current Press Secretary and Director of Communications Lauren Houck for taking the time and for helping to set this up. And now on to the show.
Good too. How are you?
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a long time.
It has. Thanks for coming here.
Definitely. I've never been here before. This is
really?
a beautiful home. So, yeah, this is great.
We've had a lot of that. A lot of people have been saying, I've never been here.
Yeah, I always meet you at the Statehouse.
Yeah.
But I guess you got the senioritis going on, you're...
I'll be down there right after this. I go there next, and then go off-site, and then go back. Well, no, I have a dinner later, but...
Oh, okay.
This just worked out well from people coming from around the state, but I'm glad you said that because if we have 5 minutes, and I'll be really fast, I'll show you just a couple more rooms.
Oh, please.
Since you're this close.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Well, happy holidays.
You as well.
Thank you for having me again. This is great. Appreciate it. How much longer do you have in this house before you got to be out of here?
34 days,
34
11 a.m., January 13th, about 800 hours.
Gotcha. Great.
A lot of packing to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have the moving boxes ready? Yeah.
We do have the boxes ready.
Excellent. So, is it going to feel strange not to be the governor after this? You've been the governor for so long.
Yeah. 8 years is a long time, yes. I guess. But I'll be the same guy I was before I was governor during... I think my friends would say that I'm good, thank you. I haven't changed. Like if you talk to my sixth grade buddies or college buddies or Navy buddies, they'd say I'm the same guy I was before governor. And I'll look forward to whatever the next chapter happens to be, but with the same excitement that I had every day in this job.
Great. Do you know what you're going to do next? Or?
I don't, by design, on purpose. I've told anyone that's, brought me an idea or a potential opportunity, if they can wait until after January 13th, I'm going to run through the tape. I mean it. Hired to do this job, not this job, and something else. And I just didn't want to have that. Maybe I don't have the bandwidth, but I didn't want to be thinking about two different things.
Sure.
Now, that doesn't mean I don't have some options to start to think about on January 14th, or maybe noon on January 13th.
Right.
But I'm going to take a couple months with my wife and do whatever she says. And she said the last 8 years was about my schedule. A couple months ought to be about hers. So I will be true to my word there, and then look for an organization or company or companies that are interested in growth. And deploying cutting edge technology and having an innovative lean to them, whether it be in Indiana, hopefully, or globally.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of globally, you've obviously taken a number of international trips since you've been governor, and I'm sure we could spend the whole time talking about each of them. But one in particular that I wanted to ask you about was your visit in September to Ukraine. You were the first governor of any state to visit since Russia's invasion, and I just wanted to know why that was important to you and what you saw there.
Yeah. So much in life of progress or failure comes down to relationships and ultimately people. And what was going on and continues to go on in Ukraine it stemmed from a conversation that I had with the Ukrainian ambassador to America. And she actually, in talking to her, I stopped by to see her, and she said, "You're the first governor who stopped by in Washington, D.C. After that invasion." And I said, "We're just, helpful Hoosiers, and we have a heart, and kind of they're the front line of democracy as I see it. And friends in need should be friends indeed, meaning action. And I understand my state role, subnational role, but she reminded me that 2 of the best years of her life were spent in Bloomington, Indiana. She has an IU degree. The Ukrainian ambassador based in Washington has an IU degree.
Nice.
And so it just showed me how close the world was. And we kind of developed during a tumultuous time, never ending. I mean, we thought COVID was never ending. This is, where folks are being killed and kidnapped and slaughtered, and at the hands of an evil tyrant. And so I keep it in perspective what difference we can make. But then Zelensky said something very important. He addressed all governors, and he requested that relationships again be forged or cultivated with friends as he did before, but during the war, so that hopefully after they were stronger for it. And that, kind of light bulb went off in my head and said, well, we're in. And we feed and fuel not just Hoosiers, but folks around the world, and have been since we became a state. And so to think about all the talent and expertise and entrepreneurs that are in Indiana, businesses that do business all over the world, how can we partner with businesses over there now during the toughest of times? Because we do have relationships with our universities and with Ukraine and Kyiv. But how can we broaden that to, government to government relations, business to business relations, and people to people, meaning academia and students, exchange programs, etc. And so we're kind of looking at those 3 fronts on how we can work together, understanding, there's short term what's at stake, and then there's long term what's at stake. And you think about it, right now in Ukraine, they've got the most experienced military ground forces in all of Europe right now. Right. Some of the most cutting edge technology is being developed in Ukraine right now by defense companies from all over the world that are deploying it there. And that in and of itself, you hate to say if there's a silver lining in it, but I appreciate not only Zelensky's optimism, but also the president's, but also the prime minister's, and my counterpart, a governor, who's already been here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Since that visit.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So he came here, that oblast, and so my counterpart, which we did an MOU with, was just a few weeks ago in this very house.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
And then meeting with our companies.
Right.
Because it was real. It wasn't like, hey, let's get a photo op. We support you. It is, how can our companies, ag biotech, and manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, how can our companies in Indiana partner with yours so that we're both stronger? And you just start to think about what Putin has done, engulfing and devouring land that has some of, 22 in that eastern border of the Earth's rare raw materials that are necessary for some of the economies and industries of the future. That's why he's there and not leaving.
Right.
Because he changes the equation. Now all of a sudden you have to go to, only you can't buy from a friendly. You have to,
Right.
some of these nations have to go through, 1 or 2, China, Russia. Now, fortunately, we've got other allies like Canada, but, our supply, a lines and chains are tangled, they're intertwined. And we have to be aware of that, and that's why the world's so small, and something over there affects us here, and vice versa.
Right. And it does seem in some ways very similar to Indiana in that I've heard Ukraine referred to as the breadbasket of Europe, and what does that remind you of, So
and that is what I walked away from in my brief time there. Number one, they were so appreciative that they put an invitation out and we showed up.
Right.
Like, those are things you don't get to make up.
All right.
Like, first there stands out.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why he came here.
Yeah.
Like, and but what you just said, breadbasket, they're also so similar to us in terms of manufacturing, work ethic, even their. I said to my counterpart, he's even got kind of my sense of humor. I have his. Like, we just got along like friends, and it's a bond now. And my hope is that it continues to grow, and the post-war years, when much of the country needs to be rebuilt, whatever the Marshall Plan of the day is, hopefully Indiana has a part in that reconstruction.
Absolutely. So turning to a little bit of a different topic, earlier this month, Republican State Representative Bob Morris of Fort Wayne filed a bill to repeal the death penalty in the state. He asked for a delay of all state-level executions until the General Assembly could reconvene to consider it. In particular, as of today, we're just days away from another execution date of Joseph Corcoran, also of Fort Wayne, who has been convicted of 4 murders and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. What do you think of Morris's bill? Would you consider pausing executions? And more generally, do you think that they should take into account mental illness in terms of putting people to death?
Well, a few questions there. So let me try to unpack it, and if I missed something,
no, you're fine.
Let me know. I will wait for my final judgment until after all legal options and steps have been exhausted, and there's still one or a couple steps that have to occur. That his defense team, not him, by the way, if you read what he's requested, he has said in writing that he duped or tricked or convinced people that he had a mental illness, and it was easy to do so, and he's not. That's in writing. He has sent an affidavit that says that he believes that he not only committed 1 murder, but 4, and that it is a just sentence and conviction for him to be put to death, and that he is seeking that. It is the attorneys and other organizations that disagree with their client, actually. And the court has spoken to date and said he is competent to stand, to not stand for trial, but he is competent to be executed. Meaning the process, he has understood what he is convicted and sentenced to. And so they have set a date. They have heard the appeals. There's still a couple more hurdles or hoops legally to jump through. But you're correct. The 18th is the 18th, and that was the date that the Supreme Court set as the date after all legal recourse has been exhausted by his defense team. So here we are on the 10th, little 8 days away, and I'll weigh in on my opinion. I will say this: I'm not trying to be cute or coy. I do subscribe to capital punishment as a means for ultimate justice. And I did, when I ran for this job, was very transparent about my belief and haven't wavered on that position.
Mm-hmm.
On this case, I want to take it case by case,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, and wait until all legal recourse has expired.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're literally a day or days away from
Right.
having to make that decision,
Mm-hmm.
of which I would have up until the last,
Mm-hmm.
hour of
Right.
the 18th before it would be implemented.
Sure.
So, to be determined. On Representative Bob Morris, I do understand he shared with me directly his change of heart and mind
Mm-hmm.
on this. Mine hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the convicted individual has sought not to participate in
Mhm.
any part of that, whether it be he disagrees with his own legal team,
Mm-hmm.
not only the people like Representative Morris,
Mm-hmm.
who have had a change of heart or mind. So
Right.
I'll let Representative Morris's legislative initiatives speak for themselves in the proper venue, but I'm not going to call a special session. I have my convictions and my
Mhm.
beliefs and hold them very dear, and I'm very thoughtful about them. It's it'll be
Right.
a very, very, very somber day
Mm-hmm.
at night. That's part of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on divisive issues, I feel like a lot of times national politicians will say we should let the states decide whenever a controversial issue comes up. But as you know, Indiana, like about half the states, has no mechanism for voter-driven ballot initiatives. Do you think Indiana should institute such a system? And if you don't, why not?
If you go down that route, you need to craft it with a very narrow, purposeful focus. Or I've seen other states use it, some better than others. So the way you craft such a bill,
I used to live in California, so I've seen it go wrong. So.
yeah, I mean, on a number of occasions, and states closer to us
Sure.
that have tried and then tried again and then tried
Yeah.
again. Well, I didn't really mean that, or it was too general, or courts then intervene. And to date, I believe that our system of electing individuals. I mean, we live in a democratic republic. We
Mhm.
elect people to vote for our interests, hopefully, and if we don't think they do, then we vote them out.
Mm-hmm.
But it is up to us. So it won't be for me to say. I get your
Sure.
question was, what do I think? And,
Yeah.
and I do think.
Obviously, you're not a king. You
Right,
couldn't.
right, yeah. And nor will I be in the seat that would be able to affect it
Mhm.
through the platform of the governor's office.
Right.
But there certainly wasn't that interest in the legislature
Mhm.
during my 8 years.
Mhm.
And I checked the pulse on that issue
Mhm.
throughout the 8 years, because it's not anything new. We just haven't had the appetite or the desire legislatively. And as a governor, the reality is you start to pick things that have more than a 0% probability of occurring
Mhm.
to spend your time on.
Sure. You mentioned that you kind of weigh these issues, you have a lot of thought to them, and in all my dealings with you over the years, I've always found you to be a pragmatist. I always feel like you think through the issues. Even if I would have come to a different
Yep.
conclusion, I feel like you weighed all the facts of the case. It seems like the part of the Republican Party, that statewide and nationally, that's kind of coming into power now after these elections is maybe not so much that strain, and is more of an idealistic strain. I kind of view you more in the Dick Lugar tradition of Republicans. So what do you make of that split, and how do you see the party nationally and statewide heading in terms of that?
I hope I've been a pragmatic, consensus building governor. That's certainly what I've sought. That's been the approach that I've sought every day. And I shared this with someone that I've served on the executive committee of the National Governors Association, and which is both parties, Democrat and Republican governors, that come together on a regular basis throughout the year to share policy and practice concerns. And in a meeting, I said to my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, I'll stand with you on topics that maybe we only agree on 3 out of 10 parts of the issue. And we can say that we only agree on 3 out of 10, but we're going to make progress on these 3. Mm-hmm. Instead, and I said, I'm in pursuit of progress, not the perpetual pursuit of perceived perfection. And so often, yeah, and so, like, we're losing time mm-hmm. and increasing people's anxiety when we talk about, I'm going to go fight to balance the budget, or mm-hmm. fight to eliminate the deficit, or fight to, like, they've been saying this for 8 years I've been in mm-hmm. office at the federal level. Mm-hmm. It's worse mm-hmm. by every measure.
Yes.
By a lot. Mm-hmm. And like 35 trillion now. Like mm-hmm. at what point does the fighting stop right. and the progress occur? Mm-hmm. And so to answer that question, I think that we have to hold people like me accountable for our, not just plans, but the outcomes of those plans. And it takes it comes down to citizenship and involvement and engagement. And I've tried to be an alternative that is all about that. And if I fail somewhere, I try to learn from it, improve it, tweak it. Obviously, you don't get everything right always the first time. But here's what I do know as a paperback student of history. You have to look at these things in larger context and understand that there are cycles, and understand that the pendulum swings and it can gain velocity either way. And for some who act in the extreme, they're punished for it. Mm-hmm. And it's always a binary choice in politics today between one or the other. And mm-hmm. oftentimes it comes down to, who do I fear the most? Mm-hmm. Maybe they're not necessarily happy about my choices, but I got to make a choice. Mm-hmm. And on this occasion, it scares me more. Mm-hmm. And so now with that, you're given, after each election, a huge opportunity to convince folks that your motives are pure and progress can be made. And then once it is, it strengthens you. If you don't, if people feel duped, mm-hmm. Then there will be consequences for that. And when those are, I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, but we shall see in the next 2-4 years, not just change that occurs in America or Indiana, but all over the world it's happening. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Syria right. or mm-hmm. France.
Oh man, yeah.
Or you name it. Mm-hmm. 6 continents. I know I don't see much controversy in Antarctica. Yeah. But on the other 6, there are controversial,
sure.
heady topics being discussed mm-hmm. That will have an electoral impact immediately and long term.
Right.
We should probably start, if you want to show him a few things.
Okay.
Get going with that.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. And one thing I do always ask is, what music have you been listening to lately?
I have, believe it or not, not Taylor Swift.
Come on.
Which would have been if you were polling in this state.
Right, exactly.
I have gone back to, and maybe I'm more sentimental. I was in this opera kick, Bocelli.
You told me Bocelli last time.
I was in that kick for a while. But now I've gone back to like the 80s.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I've been, so I'll tell you what I listened to last night at length. Two albums.
Okay.
I can't believe I'm saying this. Molly Hatchet and Rush.
Wow. Would not have expected
You wouldn't
that.
have guessed.
From Bocelli to Rush. This is amazing.
And so much I was subjecting my wife to it as she was working on a speech that she has to give. She could hear. I would recommend put on Limelight or Red Barchetta with Rush, and put on Dreams from Molly Hatchet.
Okay, great. Will do. Thank you. Out of left field. I love it.